Sleep and weight loss. What's the connection? Let's talk about it. Hey, I'm Mike.
And I'm Twain.
Welcome to another episode of 40 Plus Fit, the podcast where we unpack the science of sustainable weight loss and fitness for those over 40. I feel like I should take a nap.
Yeah, you do look a bit tired today, Mike.
I feel a bit tired. And
Oh no.
I think that this might be the time for us to talk about sleep.
Well, technically, it should be the time for you to go and sleep, but you know. Okay, I hope you guys appreciate our nice intro.
Our attempt at a
Our
nice intro.
attempt. Hey, you gotta be bad at something before you can be less bad at it, right? That's what I've heard. Um, but yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, today we want to tackle a what I honestly think is a super important topic. I have a lot of personal stories on how it's impacted me. I also have a lot of like stories from clients, that I want to share all these things about sleep and health and how it could potentially make life suck, if you don't get enough.
True, true, true. And not just sucking, but we also struggle with weight. There's a connection that we're going to chat about today as
Yes.
to how lack of sleep actually might be cutting into your gains in your weight loss or fitness journey.
Yep. I mean, you could be doing everything right, but if you're not getting enough sleep, and you find that like I'm doing all these things with my health, with my nutrition, with my training, I'm training really hard, I'm eating really well, but I'm still not losing weight, I'm still not losing fat. I hit a plateau. Honestly, it could really be the sleep that's holding you back. So let's talk about that.
Right. So I think we'll start off with, what's the importance of sleep? So for me, it's like sleep is really where your body restores itself.
Yep.
If you don't have sleep, it's like driving a car with no fuel. Your car's not really going to
Yeah.
go anywhere after a while.
I mean,
So
at some point, it's not going to turn on, right? Like,
correct.
you're not even going to get it started.
And it's the same thing that applies, when you're talking about sleep. Sure, yes, we can go maybe a day, two, some crazy people 3 days without sleep, but thereafter, but the drawbacks of that is just going to
Mm. It's just immense.
compound.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just immense.
So maybe you can just break down what are the different stages of sleep.
Yeah. Stages of sleep, it can get a little bit confusing when you Google it because what you'll see is sometimes they might display it as like 5 stages of sleep. So there's your like N1, N2, N3 levels of sleep where these are like the non-REM stages of sleep. And then you have the REM stages of sleep. So like the technical terms for this is like REM stands for rapid eye movement. And that's the stage of sleep where it's like the deeper sleep component, like the real deep sleep quality components where right now your body is completely relaxed, optimized for recovery. Your body's recovery processes are really taking place. And then that's where all the restoration happens. Yeah. And that's also kind of where like if you're having the rapid eye movement stuff, that's also where you potentially would dream because that's the dreaming part. Like I think scientists are not exactly clear what dreams are, but based on the current body of evidence, it seems like dreams are just actually just a byproduct of your brain processing information, putting it together, and all. Like there's no real deeper meanings to it. So you can have the craziest dreams, to be honest, and look like don't worry if it seems weird or whatever. Yeah, it's probably just the way your brain's processing the information. So, in terms of sleep, generally it happens in cycles. The standard average cycle is supposed to be about 1.5 hours. For those of you who are, parents who have had newborns, you know that for a baby sleep cycle is like way shorter. So yeah, I can see Mike nodding his head vigorously here. But yeah, generally when you are more developed adult already, your sleep cycle is roughly around 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes. And then what happens is that the majority of that happens in the non-REM part of sleep. So this is like the lighter to moderate levels of sleep. This is where your body is like going through those transitional processes to shut down some of the non-vital metabolic stuff, or not shut down, but slow it down, so that your body can actually shift gears into that restoration mode. So technically, when you sleep at night, you actually your metabolism actually drops by, I think, about 15%. um yeah, and that's conducive for your body to recover itself, so that's really important. um and and the key thing that you want is you want to make sure that when you sleep you get to that, because all these leading up of the non deep levels of sleep. It's leading up into the deeper quality level of sleep where we ultimately get the maximum restoration. And that's where the brain actually gets repaired. So it's kind of like, you think about it this way, it's kind of like your body preps all the other parts first, all the physical restorative components first, before once all these things are kind of like prepped and restored, it goes into the actual brain part of the neurological part of restoration, right? Where it's just repairing, let's say, nervous system, kind of up down regulation stuff, synapses in the brain, things like this. And once you complete that, it finishes the sleep cycle, it takes a rest break and repeats itself again. Okay, so when you sleep at night, ideally you should be getting like 6 cycles of sleep, right? 6 cycles of sleep. So that's like 9 hours of sleep on average. So 8 to 9 hours of sleep on
Mm.
average. That's ideal. Some people might need a little bit more. Some people potentially could survive on a bit lesser. No, maybe not survive, but potentially some people could be optimized on a bit lesser, maybe like 1 cycle lesser. But so far the research isn't very convincing on that as well. It's like 6 cycles is probably where most people would need to be, yeah, to get maximum restoration. Cool. And then the last thing to sleep also, I think I pretty much summarized it all. But the last thing to take note is that each successive cycle of sleep actually compounds on the previous one. Okay, and you get like slightly longer deep sleep duration, and it gets a bit like shorter in the non-deep sleep duration just because it's a bit easier to prep you back into the deep sleep restoration. And so ideally that means that's why you want uninterrupted sleep, because you want each cycle to build on each other. So if you have very disrupted sleep, what happens is you might have a cycle or two, and then you wake up, and then after you go back into it again, and now it takes a little while to get back into that kind of deep sleep again. So the cycle might be a little bit longer than it needs to be.
So when you're looking at these cycles are time dependent. It's not like I can do six cycles in 4 hours because I'm efficient.
Well, you can't control you,
So
you, you can't control
so
when
it's time dependent, right?
it is no, it's process dependent, but it happens at a certain rate.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of time dependent in that sense, because it's rate dependent rather. So it would take a certain amount of time. You can't rush it. I can't say I want to be in deep sleep right now and I'm in deep sleep. There's nothing you can really do to
Okay.
immediately get into deep
So
sleep.
so
Yeah.
like when I go and let's say I have football on that night, right?
Yeah.
So living in the country that I live in the time zone I'm in,
Yeah.
football generally means it finishes 1 a.m. in the
Yeah.
morning. So if I go and then watch football, exciting game, so you can't sleep until 1:30 to 2 a.m.
Yeah.
and then you have to wake up at like 6
Yeah.
or 7 a.m.,
Yeah.
right? And you feel like absolute crap for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
That is because the rhythms did not complete, that I cut my usual sleeping time short.
It's unlikely that the rhythms didn't complete per se. I think what's more likely is just that you don't have as much quantity of sleep.
Okay.
Yeah. But it also could be that, like, if you have an alarm and you need to wake up at like 6 a.m., right, for example, and you happen to fall asleep at 2 a.m.,
Mhm.
right? Let's say your first cycle of sleep is maybe 2 a.m. to about 3:30. Okay. Again, it's not exactly precise, but roughly, right?
Yeah.
So to about 3:30. And then from about 3:30 to 5 a.m. is maybe your next cycle of sleep.
Okay.
So 5 to 6, and then 6 a.m. your alarm rings and wakes you up. You could be waking up in the middle of your next cycle. So that would be very disruptive. You end up being really groggy because it's like kind of, your whole body is kind of like prepped already, and your brain's kind of starting to enter the mode of like, oh, let's start to repair this thing, right?
Okay.
Imagine you take your car into the shop, and the mechanic opens up the bonnet, and he's like trying to adjust certain things with your engine,
Mm.
and then you go in there, and then you just turn on the engine and try to drive the car out while he's
Right.
doing that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff is going to happen, right? So it's the same thing. It's the
Okay.
same thing, or it's the same ish analogy. Yeah,
Same idea.
same
Yeah.
idea. Yeah.
Okay. And I think the other part that also comes into play is the hormones, right?
Oh yes. Yep.
So, like the ones that I know of is your leptin and your ghrelin,
Ghrelin.
ghrelin, always whichever. But the leptin is the one that's, because I got this in an article that I wrote recently
Yep.
on our website 40plusfit.com, guys want to go and read it. But the hormone, the leptin hormone, is produced by fat cells, and it
Hmm.
signals satiety
Yeah,
to the
it's the
brain.
satiety hormone.
And then you get the ghrelin. This one
It's
is
the appetite
produces
hormone. Yeah,
by the stomach, and
yeah.
it stimulates hunger.
A great way to a great way to remember this one is quite simple. Ghrelin, just think stomach growling, ghrelin, and then you know like okay, that's appetite. So if that goes up, it just means that your body wants you to eat more, right? It's trying to
All right, so normally these leptin levels they rise after a meal, right?
rise after a
And
meal,
they
rise when you
decrease
sleep. Yeah,
before the next meal.
yeah.
While ghrelin follows the opposite
The
pattern.
opposite. Yeah,
All right, but now what happens when you have sleep deprivation? You get decreased leptin. So therefore, with insufficient sleep, leptin production can decrease,
yeah,
and this means that you might not feel full after eating,
yeah.
and that leads to a lot more overeating. And likewise, or should we say, opposite
Conversely, yeah,
is conversely, increased ghrelin. The studies suggest that sleep deprivation can actually lead to increased ghrelin levels, intensifying hunger pangs and cravings.
yeah. So it's like it's really a double prong attack on yourself. It's taking away the defense of your leptin levels, telling you, hey, you don't actually need to eat as much, and then it's increasing the intensity of the hunger, which is like just you're just getting stabbed twice, in a sense,
That's right. That's right. So the other hormones that also get affected is cortisol.
for sure.
All right,
Yeah,
because it's the stress hormone,
yeah.
and that leaves your elevated cortisol can promote fat storage, and which also contributes to
It
weight gain.
doesn't. So this is a common misconception in a sense. Elevated cortisol will not promote fat storage per se. What it does is it limits fat mobilization from the cells. Yeah. When you I think a lot of times when people talk about stress and stress hormones, they only talk about cortisol, but cortisol is not the only one because if cortisol is elevated, like cortisol elevation is a good thing because
Mhm.
generally it actually mobilizes fat fat mobilization from the cells. But then if it stays elevated for too long, then you have the consequent effect of example like adrenaline and noradrenaline, all these stuff being raised up a bit higher as well. And then what that does is that it tends to limit stuff like fat mobilization. It tends to kind of suppress other metabolic like systems. Example like sex, sex hormone production, right? It tends to drop that down because from the body's perspective, if these hormones are elevated, it means that your body, for a long enough period, it just means that your body is in that state where it needs to kind of push and needs to be ready for action, right? So, it's trying to conserve the non-essential functions. And if you're in a dangerous state, if a dangerous animal is chasing you in a life or death situation, you need to run. Like your sex hormone system is not exactly vital for that,
Yeah.
right? So it suppresses that. But obviously, with our current modern system, it's like we are very stressed for longer periods of time, and you cannot differentiate the different levels of stress. Your boss gives you a lot more work, you end up being overwhelmed. You're always stressed out. You go home, you have an argument with your partner. You go and try to talk to your kids. Your kids are just crying. You have all these things that just like build up all this stress in you, and your brain just interprets that as like danger, danger, danger. And so you have all these suppressive effects that are kind of happening when that happens. Yeah. And then you talk about lack of sleep. There's no restoration as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's just like elevated all the time. You just, man, your body's thinking like, what the hell is going on, brother? You know, you got to sort this shit out. Like we're dying, we're dying, we're dying. Yeah.
So like that will also then lead to or have an impact on muscle recovery.
Yes, 100%
Mm.
because you're not actually recovering at all.
Mm.
So whatever you have done in your training, the stimulus has been given, but has your body actually recovered and adapted? I think a lot of times people forget that when we train in the gym, that's not where your body actually changes, right? That's where your body undergoes the disruption. It gets the instruction from all the weights that you lift, all the things that you do. It gets the instruction to say, hey, you need to be able to withstand this level of you know what do you call it, like stimulus. Like
Mm.
I need you to be able to withstand this level of strain and all to the muscles and all. And the muscles would then in the downtime be like, okay, shit, let's power this thing up, right? Let's try to get bigger, let's try to get stronger, let's try to come back, adapt to be able to handle that level of strain and more. And so there are two parts to that. One part is, you can think of it this way: when you go to the gym, you're digging the hole. Okay, when you're in the recovery period, there are two parts. One is filling up the hole back to the same level, and then you should hopefully have excess resources to help you create a little hill on top of that, right? Create a little hill on top of that hole that you just filled up. But what happens if you don't get enough sleep? It's essentially you dig a hole with the training, but then if you don't get enough sleep, right, you are digging it even further. So now your hole is a lot bigger. And because you're not getting enough sleep, you don't have enough dirt to fill out that hole. So you're barely getting it back up to the same level, if at all. I mean, most people are just shy of like it's still a hole, you know. And you don't get any adaptation. You don't really grow any muscle. You don't get any of the benefits from your training really because you haven't recovered. You haven't adapted. Yeah. So I think that's one thing to take into consideration.
So that's in the muscle recovery, right? But this
It's in the muscle recovery
will
component.
also play a part in your performance
Yes, I think
and your
we can
energy
lump
levels.
it all
Mm,
together because broadly this whole I'm talking about is like a fatigue. Think of it like a fatigue debt. If you um like going to the gym, just doing any daily thing, everything has like a little bit of a fatigue debt. Some things cost less, some things cost a lot more. At the end of the day, when you go and sleep, you're cashing in and paying back on this fatigue debt
yeah.
to a large degree. If your level of paying back doesn't fulfill that fatigue debt well, you end up paying interest on the remaining debt, right? And the interest is the compounding health effects that you get. So essentially, that's what it is.
Okay. So let's build on that. What about issues that arise from lack of sleep and not having a good sleep habit, even outside of fitness?
Yes.
What are some that we could potentially occur?
Oh, I think the big one here is just health. Like your overall mental health is one thing, but just the general health, right? Not getting enough sleep means that your body cannot, you know, repair itself and keep all the metabolic functions healthy. We've already talked about that component.
Mm,
And it might not sound very scary, I think. Just thinking about like, oh, it's like I'm still functioning okay, I'm still all right. But the issue is that one big impact of not getting enough sleep is actually issues with brain conditions as we get older. So brain diseases, the big ones, okay, that really impact us are things like early onset dementia, Alzheimer's, conditions of the brain that involve lapses in memory, holes in the memory, and processing, and even just further cognitive development. Your continual ability to learn and contextualize things
mm,
as a human being, right? So in net effect, it's just your ability to function as a proper human being and have a good quality of life. And this is something that I think like it's not talked about enough really, where it's in a sense the silent killer, not in the sense that it just kills you, but it really kills your quality of life, right? But is that if you don't get enough sleep, you can develop all these things quite early. If I'm not wrong, the stats, I'm not super clear on the stats on this, but I do believe that the uh age, like the development of dementia like conditions and symptoms, or even diagnose early onset dementia, the stats on that has been shifting, in terms of the age range, lower and lower each year. So that means like more people in the 45 to 55 age range are actually getting these kind of issues where it used to be in the
mm.
like 65 to 75 kind of age range, you know. So it's really a big thing, and a large part of that is just due to the nature of a lot of our lifestyles not prioritizing sleep. Work tends to be pushed over into past the home boundary as well. That kind of work-life balance component starts to go out the window. People are getting so overwhelmed with their workload, and then also trying to juggle the rest of their life, and then getting some time back for their own personal life. A lot of people are short-changing their own sleep. I think that some Chinese researchers, they actually came up with a term for this. It's called like revenge bedtime procrastination, where a lot of times people know they need to go and sleep, but they lie in bed and they doom scroll, right? Like you just use your phone, you do all this
Yeah.
stuff, like you just do whatever you can to procrastinate going to bed, even though you're tired and you need to go to bed. And you do that because a lot of times people just want to get back some sort of semblance of free time. So I think that's really the biggest impact here, which I really want to highlight more than just the weight loss components and stuff.
Yeah.
Those have a lot of downstream effects for sure. You don't have enough, like if you're losing weight when you're not getting enough sleep, a larger portion of that weight is going to be uh, lean tissue. So it's probably more related to you losing more muscle than otherwise. If you get more sleep, the amount of muscle that you lose when you're losing weight is like way lesser, way lesser. Or if you want to look at it the other way, that means the amount of fat that you lose if you're getting enough sleep is like pretty much all the weight that you lose is majority fat. If you don't get enough sleep, only a small percentage of that. I think it's half. At max, it's only half of that you're losing from fat. So you're already losing some gains in that sense. Yeah. But to go back to the topic of the health component and really the brain conditions that come with sleep, the issue for this also is that by the time you start displaying symptoms of these early onset dementia and Alzheimer's kind of like conditions, by the time you display those symptoms, it's too late. It's only management already at that point. And the thing is like also I was talking to my friend who was or one of my clients who's like a neurosurgeon, right? We're talking about all these issues, and he was saying like, yeah, it's like if you are displaying the symptoms, something needed to be done 10 years ago. And I speak of this from like kind of personal experience from two incidences. One of it is um my own personal experience with when I was setting up my gyms, setting up my businesses and stuff. I kind of bought into the whole hustle culture shit, right? Like where you're like, oh, you got to grind, sleep 2 hours, 3 hours is fine, and then you got to work and whatever. So I was like, all in that. I was training hard, still preparing for competitions. I was still dieting, whatever I'm doing with my diet. And then I'm just running all my businesses and stuff, right? And I was only sleeping like maybe 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, and some days 2 hours only. And it reached a point where not only did I feel the weariness and the physical effects, my performance in the gym was suffering, but when I go and take my like yearly, I would always take like my blood test twice a year. So when I take my blood tests, my hormonal profiles came back, right? My thyroid itself, my T4 was like way low, already getting into like the bottom end range. And then my actual like free test itself, the testosterone levels were also like below the normal range. So the normal range for testosterone is between 300 nanograms to uh 800 nanograms. That's like the normal range you want to be in, right? I was at like 217 or 218, something like this. So it was really, really low, and this is somebody that it's like, look, at the time I'm just in my late 20s. I should not be at those levels at all. 100%. And given the fact that I'm dieting well, I'm eating enough protein, I'm training hard, I'm doing all these stuff, right? And I have a decent body composition. So my friend, who's the one that does the blood test for me because he's a doctor, he was telling me like, bro, you need to do something about this because this is not healthy at all. So I knew the one thing there was really just my sleep. Like I was not sleeping enough, so I had to really like make a drastic change for that. And unfortunately, I was in a position to just do that. I don't have kids, or wife or whatever at that time, so I could really overhaul my entire lifestyle. So I was fortunate in that sense. I made that decision to do that. Where I think some people don't actually have that luxury, like there's a couple I used to train back when I was doing a lot more mobile PT. Mobile PT is basically going to people's homes to train them, right? So I started off my journey into fitness um, as a profession with that. And this couple, the wife was suffering from already early onset dementia, and she was only 47. The husband was 48. Okay, but he's fine. He's totally fine. So he's taking care of the wife. Okay, at 47, and the wife is experiencing some of these issues with like short-term memory loss, things like this, already. And they did the scans, they did all that because they're very well to do. Okay, they did all the scans, all that, and the doctors tell him, hey, there's nothing you can do to cure this. You can only manage it. So I started training them when she was 47. And when we started training, everything was still okay. She could still recognize me. She could still, when I was introduced to her, she could remember who I was. For the first year. Into the second year, as the condition worsened, her memory would get so bad that when I came to the door, she would not open the door for me because she didn't know who I was. And then I would have to call the husband, and the husband would be like, "Oh, no, 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 this is the trainer. Train's coming to train us." And then every single session I go down, he would have to reintroduce me to her. That was into the second year. And then it reached the point where I'm like, hey, so and so, what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna do flutter cakes, okay? Then she'll be like, yeah, yeah, okay, cool. And then she'll sit down on the mat, and then after that she'll just look at me and be like, oh, uh, who are you? And I'm just like standing there. It hits me so hard because number one, it's obviously tough, like to train a person who can't even remember who you are, right? Who can't even remember the instruction you gave them a second ago. And it's just heartbreaking because I'm training both of them and I'm trying to train the husband as well. And I can feel like for the husband, this is the time, that 1 hour where I train both of them is the time where he can get some freedom for a while, some respite.
Mm.
And when you reach that stage where he actually has to kind of interject in and like kind of reassure her sometimes, because sometimes um she will not be responsive to me as well. Like I can see how it's that struggle is there for sure. My heart really goes out to them. And after about, I think, 2 years of training them, I told him, like, I don't think that I can I'm the right. I don't think I can continue training you all because I think she needs a different, like, kind of help already, for that. And it was tough, man. It was so tough. And I remember having chats with him because I'll have chats with him all the time in the first year, especially. And he would tell me, like, I asked him, like, oh, the doctors know, like, what caused the condition and what caused it all? And then he said, like, oh, the doctors all agree that it's like lifestyle based, and say, oh, what do you mean by lifestyle based? And he was saying, well, she used to work really hard for the kids, right? So she used to be working herself and taking care of the kids, and she always sacrifice her sleep. She would never sleep. Like for 20 years, she would always be sleeping 4 or 5 hours, the kind of thing, and I'm sure some of you listening might be thinking, hey, I'm sleeping 4 or 5 hours, I'm still feeling fine. Yeah. And the thing is, like, she was doing it for such a long time. It just took its toll eventually, and then it manifests as this. I mean, it's fortunate, like they are more fortunate because they have resources, right? He's a wealthy guy. He
Yeah.
he deals in oil. So okay, good. He has resources. And he has the luxury of saying like, okay, I have all these things in place that I don't really have to work, and I can really take care of my wife.
Mm.
But you also think about it from his point of view, like he's trapped to some degree. So when I say take care of your sleep, sometimes it's not even just for yourself, right? Like it really hits home for me a lot because when I look at these things and I think about these experiences that I had, it just impacted me so strongly that I'm thinking, hey, if I never ever want to reach that stage, like if there's something I can control, I never want to reach that stage where I'm going to be a liability to everybody else, you know because at the end of the day, when you reach that point, you're not the one that suffers the most. I mean, you might suffer from like an objective point of view, someone looking in, like, oh, it might be really poor thing, right? But if you think about it from the perspective of somebody who's suffering from it, like, you don't really know what's going on. It's
Yeah.
relatively ignorant. I mean, you have your little, like, spouts and whatever, but um yeah, it's the people around you that suffer the most. So taking care of your sleep, I didn't mean for this to get so, like, grave and serious, right? But if you don't take care of your sleep, like, this is some of the things that potentially you could be staring down. You know,
Okay. So what would you say is how can we create a good sleeping routine?
the I think the topmost thing is, like, you have to develop some sort of a sleeping routine. Um, that No, sorry, no. Instead of going to the specifics of the sleep routine itself, I think the topmost thing you need to do is you need to decide what is your schedule going to be like. You need to decide, like, when are you going to have that sleep time, because you can try to create the best sleep routines, but if you don't commit to a certain, like, sleep timing and be consistent with that, the no sleep routine is going to really help you, because you're not going to prioritize this.
Mm.
And the problem is that it's going to feel difficult because you have to so-called give up certain things. Like, your life might be currently in a state where, just I mentioned revenge bedtime procrastination, right? Most people are working really hard. You might feel like your entire day has gotten away from you dealing with other people's shit. And you don't have any time for yourself. And you have to accept, maybe if that's the case, you have to accept that and slowly work on managing the other components. But yeah, I think that's the topmost thing you have to do, which is set that timing of, like, when you want to go and sleep. Now, the key way to do that would be to do it a bit more progressively. It's like, if you're not even having a regular sleep time, first thing is to set as a regular sleep time. Some days you're sleeping at 1 a.m., some days you're sleeping at 10 p.m., kind of thing. Just set a regular sleep time first. Maybe 11 p.m., maybe 11:30 p.m., or 12 midnight, whatever it is, right? That you feel is manageable. Start with them there. And then slowly push that forward by like half an hour. You know, the times from based on our natural circadian rhythm and just a light and dark pattern in most places of the world. I'm not talking about like if I don't know if you're in like Finland or something where it's in summer where it's like they like 23 hours a day or something, but like regular countries where you have a nice light and dark cycle to things. um Consensus is more or less agreeable that the 9 p.m., 10 p.m. kind of timing to midnight is where if you go and sleep during that time, you actually get a lot better quality sleep. And then leading into the post midnight cycles of sleep, those cycles become even more effective. Okay. So if you end up sleeping past midnight, it is less effective, essentially. So in some instances, that has led people to interpret it as I think the 9 p.m. to like 12 midnight. Like if you can sleep within this timing, you're actually getting as many of the golden hours, so to speak, of sleep. So if you can, definitely getting to around that range, 9 to 10 p.m. Yeah, if you can get some sleep there, it would be great. But that's like optimal. Not everybody's gonna be able to do that. So look, I think for most of my clients, most of them are like 10, 30, 11, anywhere between a 10 to 11 kind of period.
Mm.
Most of them do that. Although I do notice a lot of it comes down to like social culture as well. So in Australia, I notice a lot of people tend to sleep much earlier because they wake up much earlier. Whereas like in Singapore, a lot of my clients, or even Malaysia or Southeast Asian areas, they tend to sleep like maybe midnight, but then they can wake up a bit later as well.
But
Um,
I suppose the sun setting time has a lot to do with that as well.
yes,
Because
yes,
usually our body will tell us if the sun's gone down now, so an hour or two after that is usually where you start winding down, getting ready to sleep.
yes.
Now in Malaysia, that time is only 7:30 p.m.
I think it might be later than that, right? Because yesterday I was looking at it. At 7 p.m. I was looking outside and it was still pretty bright.
So usually it averages about 7:27,
Ah, I see. Gotcha.
7:30 around there. So but it drops quite fast.
Yeah,
Once it drops quite
yeah.
fast. But where I grew up, 5:30 is the time that the sun goes down,
Yeah, yeah. It makes
right?
sense.
So 2 hours after that, 7:30. Then at that time, we didn't have all this on-demand Netflix and everything that we have now.
Yeah,
So we had to watch programmed,
yeah.
and 7 to 8 was like all our cool shows, like the A Team, MacGyver,
Oh,
all those
yeah.
kind of shows. So
You're really dating yourself here, man.
so so hey, it's 40 plus.
Oh, okay, okay, it's fair enough. I'm
So
sure many people will be
so we watched
appreciating
that
that.
show, and then after that show, bedtime. So you
Yeah,
sleep 8 p.m. every night. Very
yes,
easy
yes,
to schedule in.
yeah,
So when it comes now, like you're suggesting, is that we should set in the schedule.
yeah,
I think it's a bit difficult because
mm,
of our on-demand lifestyles that we have nowadays.
yeah,
Like I look in Malaysia, a lot of my friends, they only get back home like 7, 8 o'clock at night. Then they want to have their dinner,
yes,
right? They
yeah.
want to have their dinner.
That's
After you've
that's
had your dinner, now you want to actually have a bit of time to relax,
yeah.
so maybe whatever. So 10 p.m. is like, it's probably
It's
the
it's more
earliest
or
a
less the
lot of
norm
them
already, right, for
really
them.
get to sleep.
Yeah,
Yeah, myself, I'm terrible. I'm like a midnight, sometimes 1 a.m. kind of guy,
yeah,
which I'm trying to dial back progressively, as you say,
yeah,
because I'm also aiming about the 10 to 11
yeah.
kind of timing.
I think for that, like, I think the reality is that what you said is very, very true, right? Like that's the real struggle everybody faces. Especially if you're in an area, but if you're in an area where there is a bit of a seasonal difference
Mm.
into the like light and darkness timings, you need to account for that as well. Um, yeah, but the most important thing really is just having that like fixing that timing first that you feel you can
Mm.
manage, and then you start from there and you move back.
So I went on the advice that you gave prior to this one, in another conversation that we had.
Yep.
Instead of focusing on the time that you must go to sleep, focus on the time you need to wake up, and then
Mm.
work your way backwards. So if you say you need to sleep 8 hours a night, and you need to wake up at 6 o'clock, that means you need to sleep at 10 o'clock. If my maths is
Yep.
not too
Agreed.
far off, you rather work it that way. So you prioritize your waking up time rather than your sleeping time.
Yep.
But your sleeping time needs to correlate with your waking
With
up
your
time.
waking up
You
time. I mean, the idea for that is that, and that was actually going to be the second strategy I was going to
Ah,
suggest. But the idea with that is that if you can fix your wake up time, then automatically you get so tired, or the tiredness will accumulate, over the days, that you would naturally want to go and sleep at the time you should be sleeping. So that's the idea behind it. And I'll be honest with you, the practical real world results of that seems to be pretty much 50-50. Because again, and I do think this is the pervasiveness of our social media technologies, or
mm,
just the level of interconnectedness that we have right now. Like you mentioned just now, nowadays we have all these like entertainment stuff, Netflix. It's all on demand, so easy to access.
yeah.
So I do think even addressing that can be very helpful for establishing this kind of better sleep patterns. I do actually have a suggestion for that though. For that, there's a really, really good book that I thought that really helped me in terms of my own management of tech in my life, right?
Mm,
It's by Cal Newport. It's called, I'm trying to think of Digital Minimalism.
okay.
I did think that's the name of the book. It's a really good book because he just gives you like some really practical things to go and try and do, and then you just try it out for yourself. And then after that, progressively he explains like further some of the in-depth details, but it has like a little bit of a step-by-step process that you can actually start to implement into your life. So it's worth it. If it's worth checking out, to be honest. And the whole point of that is to help you, is it like not even detox, right? Like that's just a buzzword, but help you declutter your technological the involvement of tech in your life, to a point where the tech serves you, not you being enslaved to the tech.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a really good book. Try it out if you have struggling. If you notice like maybe a large portion of why your work stretches over, or why your life seems so overwhelming, is because you're always constantly like responding to people, checking things.
Mm.
It could be an issue with how you're managing the organization of, let's say, like the tech in your life, and thus the way you're approaching your work. Yeah.
So digital minimalism by Cal.
Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Again, not a sponsor or anything, or like, I wish, right? Like
Yeah.
he's pretty high profile, I think that's why. But check it out. It's a pretty good book, short read, 200-ish pages. So it's not exactly like super super long book.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. I think we covered pretty much most of the things that we wanted to cover.
yeah,
Um, I think we highlighted the issues that come up for not having sleep.
yep,
We've focused on like what's the priority when you should really be sleeping, and then you gave two strategies on how to try and make up those different types of sleep. The 8 hours,
mm.
the fixing your sleeping time, and also then looking
Also
at your
fixing a
waking
wake
up
up
time.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess what we mainly get to is prioritizing sleep as part of your overall health and wellness strategy is really it's paramount.
yep,
It's something that you should not overlook, but rather prioritize.
yeah.
And so, okay,
Especially if you are already dieting and you're already training and you're putting all this effort in there,
mm,
you want that to yield as much effort as possible, as much results as possible. So like without the sleep as the foundation, all these things kind of get negated, you know. But I also don't want that to be interpreted as like, oh, if I'm not getting enough sleep, I shouldn't even try. I mean, like whatever you're doing here is already helping,
yeah,
you know,
that's
yeah,
might be even
buff,
worse
yeah,
if
buffer
you
things,
don't do that.
So keep that, and then try to optimize the sleep. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the message. Okay, just to be clear.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah,
So thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow us and share this episode to help others unlock the power of sleep.
yeah, and to those who have been listening as well. I mean, I implore you to really focus on trying to get better sleep. If not for yourself, just think of your people you love.
Yeah.
You know,
Awesome.
that's
All right.
it.
Thanks for listening
Thank
and
you.
sweet dreams.